What's up? Welcome to the Stay Human podcast from the California WorldFest up here in Grass Valley. We got my buddy Xiuhtezcatl here, and man, it is great to see you. I've been knowing you, I feel like, since you were like barely able to talk and walk. And ever since that time, you've been talking the good talk.
Cheers, bro.
We first met at the Arise Festival. I can't remember when it was, but it was the first year.
Or something.
Like that, 2011. So how old were you then?
I was 11.
11.
Yeah, so I was just a young one.
Yeah. So you're 17?
Yeah.
I'm barely that good at math to be able to figure that out. And I remember seeing you guys there as your sister and you,
my little brother,
your
too.
little brother too, and you guys were performing. I think you jumped up on stage with us and did a run that night too.
Yeah, that's true.
And Zap Mama too. And ever since then, I've been following you and what you have been doing, both as a musician and as an activist. And I think it's really great the way that you combine what you do with both of those things.
Thank you, bro.
For people who don't know you or about you, where are you from? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, and Mexico City as well. My whole family on my dad's side is from Mexico City, so I have kind of those indigenous, Mexica, traditional native roots from Mexico, and then my mom is from the States.
Yeah. And so when you were a kid, was your house filled with activism and music at the person that you are, or is this something you came to on your own?
Yeah, I mean, the organization that I'm working really closely with, Earth Guardians, began in 1992. It was started by my mama as an accredited high school, and they were just empowering young people to use their voice to address environmental and social problems. And it was such a family rootsy organization that all of my older siblings were performing. They were singing the trash can rap with the Earth Guardians at local venues all over the country, and just kind of spreading the message through the music and through the movement, going and doing school presentations, doing rallies and protests. So I kind of grew up in that environment. And then also kind of the indigenous wisdom on my father's side, learning about the interconnectedness of life, of our responsibility as human beings to protect the sacred, to protect what gives us life. That kind of shaped my understanding that as a young person in the world, I have a responsibility to use my voice, use my passion, use my life to give something back for everything our ancestors have fought so that we can have the world today. We got to do the same for the future generations.
Yeah. So you're growing up in this kind of environment. Were you also living in a neighborhood where there were kids who were just like playing video games and all off in that kind of world too?
Yeah. I mean, it was really interesting because that was the first time I got onto a stage to talk about anything. I was 6 years old. And I was talking about, as parents, you have to educate your children differently. We have to educate them to love the earth, to see it as a beautiful, living, breathing thing that we all have a responsibility to protect. Get out from in front of the video games, from your TV screens, go outside and walk in nature, reconnect. It wasn't about like stopping climate change. It was like reconnect to our feet in the soil. Yeah. And it was just, that was the message. And so I was surrounded by that as well. And growing up more so even as a teenager in society, going to high school and all that stuff, like, that's really interesting because now we're trying to infiltrate that. The media, we're trying to infiltrate, social media and using that as a platform to reach so many people. So
what did other kids look at you as? Did they think you were just like far out from outer space, who's this crazy kid talking?
I mean, kind of. I had a name that no one could pronounce and hair longer than any of the girls in my class. And I was, always missing school. I missed like 83 days on like my 7th grade year in middle school, and it was just like traveling and playing shows here and there and really developing my craft as an artist as well. So at first they were like, what's up with you? Like, oh, he's this activist kid. Yeah. And then all of a sudden I started getting opportunities like going to Bill Maher or like touring Australia and New Zealand or like, doing stuff with Trevor Noah. And like these kind of opportunities, people were like, wow, he's actually making a difference. He spoke at the UN. He did all, So I don't know. It's kind of changed over time, especially now that I'm making music, because now I'm an artist, and that's such an important part of my identity that I feel like people can relate to that more so than the activism sometimes, and so it's a good bridge to build for my peers.
Has speaking always been something that's come easily to you as a kid? Was it always a part of who you were, or was there like fears that you had to come over in developing your ability to speak your truth?
I mean, I think just the thing that is a constant evolution in learning for me is like just the knowledge that there is about so many different things. As far as being able to communicate my thoughts and my feelings and being able to talk to people, that's always been pretty natural for me since the time I was a little one. I don't know, I guess, the gift of gab kind of.
The gift of gab. So when you were a kid growing up, music was it always a big part of your house? Like, did your parents play music, or were they involved in music?
Neither of my parents play music, actually. My father from Mexico, he loved all kinds of music, from German heavy metal to classical rock and reggae. And then my mom, she never played music either. All of my siblings do. I have 3 older siblings and 2 younger ones. My 3 older siblings are super talented, beautiful singers and songwriters. My sister East is here at this festival with me, singing. Me and her are like a partner in crime, in the music that we do. But I just the passion for hip hop and to make music. I mean, I think it was largely inspired by artists like you. When the first album I ever got when I was 8 years old was Stay Human.
Oh, right.
And someone burned it and gave it to me for my 8th birthday, and I was like, this is so powerful because it's so dope. It was the first hip hop I ever really listened to, and that conscious reggae rootsy hip hop vibe was so relatable for me. But it kind of transcended this activist mentality or mindset, and hearing those songs, oh my God, that's been my favorite song since I was 8 years old.
Wow.
That song,
Wow.
And so being here and talking to you right now is a blessing, because the continuation of a generation of artists that are really going to change the envelope of how we are communicating these movements to society, that's beginning with us. That's beginning with these conversations, because it's not just about the environment or social justice or peace and love. It's about how can we get every human being on the planet understanding that our responsibility to protect this earth and our legacy for the next generation is born in love. It's not just about activists, it's about human beings. It's staying human.
That's it.
I don't know, I'm just super stoked
Awesome.
for all of it. Yeah.
Right on.
You know what I'm saying? Hey, say it with me. Say it with me, yo. Say it, I'm in love with that mango. I'm in love with that mango.
So in American society, now you're growing up with kids, and every kid's got a skateboard, every kid's got an iPhone, and every kid's got video games. So how is it that you are, like you said, infiltrating into that world and learning to be able to relate your message to kids who normally are listening to just Lil Wayne or any other kind of music that's out there?
Man, it can definitely be challenging. I think one of the greatest tools that we have to be relatable to people and for people to understand is to be authentic, and to be real, and not try to be something that we're not.
Yeah.
So I'm not pretending I love spending my time with politicians and United Nations representatives. That's I will enter that world in the same way that I will enter the music industry or Hollywood, to do projects. But I mean, I think a really important part of my message and my image is I'm just a 17-year-old kid that has a passion for protecting the planet and making music, for protecting this generation and fighting for justice. But on the other end, I'm not gonna pretend I don't, sneak out of my house and get in trouble with my friends, and that's all a part of it. And it's telling the story through a lens that's I don't know, being relatable as possible by reaching out to young people that don't feel like they have a voice, they don't feel like they have adults that will listen to them, opening up the door for changing the conversation with how this generation is involved in the world. And it's breaking down the issue of climate change. If we're talking about climate justice and that movement, it's not just an environmental problem. If you look at race issues, it's so it impacts people of color, poor brown people of color all over the world, more so than anybody else. You look at food justice, you look at environmental justice. Climate change is an issue that transcends all of that, And so I don't know, just whether it's an issue or whether it's something that young people are passionate about, trying to get them to see it in a different way through the music is such an important part of it. Because I'm trying to make conscious music, but I also want to make really lit music that's going to make everybody in the audience dance and feel something. The rhythm is more important than even the content of the lyrics, I feel like. And so balancing the two is such an important part. Working with really dope producers and listening to that new rap trap sound and taking that and talking about consciousness and talking about living your life with purpose. Right. I don't know. So it's finding those places where we can bridge the gap between our generation. Yeah,
for the art. What's the hardest part of being a teenager, apart from activism, music, everything else? What's the most challenging thing about being a teenager?
There's so much learning that happens. I feel like I've grown and learned and fallen and made so many mistakes the last couple of years that it's just
really, what would be a mistake that you can?
I mean, growing up and taking responsibility for things in your life, and especially since I've always had such a supportive community that have made a lot of what I do really easy, taking that back and really kind of holding myself accountable for my actions. I live a pretty different life than I feel like most young people, and the responsibility also lines up with all the incredible opportunities. So like I gotta find that balance as well, but also just like it's such a interesting world that we live in. One of the most difficult things.
Oh, good.
Oh, just about growing up as a teenager in this country is just like seeing what young people go through, seeing in our school systems and our education systems how young people aren't empowered to think independently or to think freely or creatively, how young people are kind of closed in a box, forced, these tests and having friends and dating girls that go to these like huge public schools. It's just like there's so much depression and apathy and disconnectedness and sadness and hurt that comes from a broken system and how we are teaching our younger generation and friends that are suicidal and friends that have killed themselves. And like those kind of issues are so incredibly important to address and to talk about. And young people still to this day, I feel like largely are disconnected from a gateway or somewhere they can connect to be a part of a community that is helping them deal with the crazy ass world we live in.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Word. Thank you. All right. So anybody here have any questions? I'm just going to repeat that because it's not in the mic. What do you think would be the best step for people to take to get young people more involved in activism?
One way that I've kind of looked at this question recently is rather than how can we get more people to become activists, I think is flipping it and looking at it through the lens of how can we get people to live their lives in a way that involves more active or more action and more accountability and understanding for how their lives, whether they are accountants or producers or musicians or singers and songwriters or athletes, how can we get people to understand that you don't have to become an activist to create change? You don't have to become an activist to care about something, but wherever it is, whatever field of work it is that you are passionate about, whatever talents it is that you have, use that to create change. Use that to influence justice, use that to share your voice with your community. I think it's kind of breaking down what we like. I don't really like the term activist. I don't really like to consider myself an activist because immediately that builds up this preconceived notion of what this person is going to be, and so often, like I'm a hip hop artist, I'm a producer, and I'm a young 17-year-old ambitious kid that wants to do something good for the world. And the biggest way to I think get young people to connect to that is to show them that look, you don't have to go become a Greenpeace volunteer and knock on people's doors to try to get them to sign petitions, but you can, with whatever events that you're planning with your school, make it more sustainable, or teach a class or a course and as a teacher and involve some kind of radical action training in there. Like there's a lot of ways that we can do it. We can bring activism into what we're already doing and the lives we're already living without becoming activists.
Any other questions?
Besides identifying people your age, how do you get the message across?
I don't believe in age.
He said besides getting the message across to people your age, how do you identify with getting a message across to people who are any age? Yeah.
I so strongly believe that the movements that will fall into place to change the way that things are in this country and in this world, to emerge into the world that we want to see, are going to be so colorful, so diverse, and intergenerational. Because the younger generation alone, I believe that we are the spearhead of the movement, that we are the front lines of the change. We are going to be the leaders of the things that come, but we need the support of every generation, of our elders, of listening to our elders and those that came before us, of listening to our parents and our adults. The intergenerationality is really important. So for me, I've done a whole range of things that connect to different audiences. For example, like going and speaking at Pioneers is a sustainability and consciousness conference in San Francisco. Like that mostly I'd say reaches older people, or putting, uploading to different platforms and speaking on different matters and going to targeting different audiences. Like I've done so much of just like everything from, spitting bars on a megaphone at a corner rally and protest to like going in and speaking at and giving presentations at elementary schools to old folks homes. So it's like bridging the gap and understanding that we all have a part to play, no matter how small it is, that change doesn't come from one person deciding that they're going to take up the torch and it's going to just be us. Like I think the biggest fault that we've had in the environmental and the climate justice movement is how undiverse it was for so many years, because we didn't understand the intersectionality between Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ, and climate justice. We didn't understand that, or indigenous sovereignty and climate justice. Like now we are beginning to see that with movements like, Standing Rock, where Black Lives Matter people came and supported and represented and said, this is an issue that we need to stand in solidarity with. You know, in that same way that we're talking climate justice, that is an umbrella that connects all these issues. So connecting the people, connecting the issues, and bringing color and diversity into all of our movements is incredibly critical as far as the way that we're communicating to the world.
And you know, you were talking before about music, about that music, you have to have a dope beat. It's got to be something that people can relate to, people can dance to. So what element does that play in what you do? And just that part of that is that spirit of fun and that spirit of like energizing this movement. So it's not something that we have to do, but it's something that we all feel like excited to be a part of.
It should be a celebration.
Yeah.
You know, this should not be like, oh, the world's gonna end, we gotta like stop these big problems. It's like, let's celebrate the opportunity that we have living in this moment to create the world we want, you know, out of the ashes of this one that's falling apart around us. So, but yeah, there's such an important emphasis that we have to put on the celebratory aspect, and I think that's expressed through the arts, and in my songs and in my music. It's like telling a story in the words, and in order for people to hear the story, they have to want to move to the music. So it's like, I don't know, I so enjoy being on a stage in front of however many people, speaking something that matters and having so much fun, because you're upstairs, you're like up on stage, you're jamming, and everybody in the audience is as well. And when there's that energy that's flowing back and forth, you can feel it. You can feel it. You can physically feel an energetic exchange. From the experience. Right. That's the other thing. So plant the seed in their mind with the concert, and they take that home and plant that and carry that out. And share that with the world.
Yeah. What is it like when you are feeling attacked? For example, you know, today in social media, there's this constant, you know, trolling of people who are just expressing their opinions. For most teenagers, it's a really hard time to just, you know, feel bullied or to feel like you're not being heard by the people in your community or your peer group or something like that. How do you respond to attacks or bullying?
Yeah. I mean, different people I've worked with said if you're not pissing anybody off, then you're not being as effective as you could be. You know, I mean, not everyone's gonna agree with you, and just in the same way that I have a right to express my opinion, I feel like all people have that right, I guess. It can be challenging, like getting death threats from the fossil fuel company. That's like scary. That's happened to me before when I'm talking about fracking in my community, you know, and speaking out about it and educating young people about it, like coming at me like your kid's gonna disappear, you know. So dealing with that, and also just like kids hating, and that's what people will inherently do. The more that you succeed, the more that you piss those people off also. So it's like, how can you walk in a good way that is surrounding yourself with positive people and dealing with interactions like that in a way that's like, I'm not going to allow that, you know, hurt me or change my courses or, you know, make me live my life differently. Like, I'm going to stay true to myself and independent and know that my path is right for the person that I am. And it's like, everybody can have their own opinions, and I think as far as people that don't like believe in climate change or say like this kid shouldn't be up there saying this, he's too young or whatever, that like, how can we find a middle ground where we can reach those people? And I think a really great example is like people that supported Donald Trump and voted for Donald Trump. Like, how come rather than vilifying those people and like putting hatred on those people, that's just as bad as you know, the hatred that Donald Trump has created in this country towards many other people. So how can we have our hands open and say, how can we have these conversations in our communities to bridge that gap, to hold everybody in a space of love? And also
be able to have an open heart and an open mind,
and just don't read YouTube comments too, you know? Like,
be able to speak your truth and your passion, be able to have an open mind and open heart to others.
Exactly.
I really believe that that's the roadmap to the future, because as we move towards a renewable energy future, if we don't take into consideration the families who are in Gulf Shores, Alabama, who are oil and gas families, or in Wyoming, who are coal families, if we don't take into consideration their jobs, their livelihoods, and include them in the renewable energy future, then we failed. Exactly. You know, so we need the best that science has to offer. We need the most adventurous or most, you know, brightest entrepreneurs. We need the wisdom of indigenous people. We need the common sense of everyday working people to work on all these things together, so that there is that sense of inclusivity as we move into renewable energy future, and which is different than what we felt during the fossil fuel era, which has been this exclusivity of people.
Exactly. No, I totally believe that there's this whole movement called the Just Transition, started by Van Jones, who's you know, one of my heroes, a good friend of mine.
One of mine too.
And he's a cool dude. And talking about how can we take that step towards the transition towards renewable energy just by empowering minority communities, by transitioning. You know, if we're taking away coal jobs, how can we supplement that with even healthier living conditions, a healthier, safer community, and all these people still get paid?
Yeah.
You know, so it's and still have a thriving, strong economy. You know, traveling to Sweden and speaking to parliamentarians and the deputy prime minister, their economy is growing rapidly every single year, and they're planning to be carbon neutral by 2045, like no carbon emissions. So I totally believe that.
Yeah, right on. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Definitely taught me a lot about that. I think young people, there's kind of a stereotype almost to think that young people are all of us are disconnected and apathetic and just want to scroll through our Instagram feeds and live our lives in that way. I think the truth of it is that it's taught me to be really compassionate. It's taught me to be really able and willing to have a conversation with someone that doesn't care, that doesn't believe, that doesn't know, and you know, really bring it to them from a perspective that's telling a story, not listing facts and figures, not talking about, you know, even bringing it in a political sense, but I think really showing young people that these are stories. This is about our community. This is about our families. This is about protecting everything that we love, you know, and getting them excited about it. Like, yeah, our generation has a lot to learn for sure, but also there are so many of us everywhere, every corner of the globe, that are so inspired, that are so fired up and ready to be a part of revolution and movement. When I do college tours and speak at colleges around the country, and I go on an 8-day tour, every single place I'm going, there's already projects started up that I'm like, whoa, I don't need to tell you guys anything. You guys are already living it. The revolution is already breathing and building and growing, and it's easy to feel isolated if you're a young person that cares about it, but just know that you are not alone, and there are resources to go out there and reach people in the community that also want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. Our generation is going to be a part of something bigger than themselves. I've believed that is our path here on this planet, is to really, you know, be leaders in the future of the world. And so it can be challenging, but I say hold closely the people around you that are in support of something bigger than just high school drama.
Yeah. All right, I got one last question for you, which is, you know, this is the Stay Human podcast, and I ask every single person who comes on the show, what is it that you do in this world that is constantly trying to put a number next to us? You know, you are what your bank account is, or you are how many Facebooks like you have, or you are, you know, how do you hold on to your humanity? What are the things that you actually do in your life that keep you connected to being human?
My father taught me that everywhere that we go, there is a place in nature, whether it's, you know, a dirty, polluted stream, or the ocean, or the Grand Canyon, or a temple, or wherever it is we go, that you put prayers and intentions in that land for yourself, for your family, for whoever, for that land, giving thanks, whether it's with a little bit of tobacco or burning some sage, or even just a thought and intention, sharing a song. And it's that connection to who I am, finding the sacred in everything around me, and everywhere that I look, and every beautiful tree, you know, standing outside. Like, having that kind of connection has been so important for me. Making and writing music and sitting down and playing keys, and then working with my brothers who are also incredibly talented multi-instrumentalists that are building really sick beats, and also talking about, okay, how are we going to change the world through this music that we're making? Seeing the most beautiful places on earth and knowing that is what we are fighting to protect. Seeing the most beautiful cultures and ways of life on earth, eating the best food on earth, and saying this is what we are fighting to protect. Getting excited about the world that we are pushing for, and just like being a kid, you know, just having fun. Not taking myself too seriously, making music that makes people dance and move, spitting bars, you know, and just like flowing, and I don't know, sharing my art with the world, and knowing that it's gonna be a better place because of the music our generation makes.
Right on. Thanks for being on the show. Xiuhtezcatl here on the Stay Human podcast, live at the California World Music Fest. Thank you for being here, and remember to always stay human.
Yeah.